Hey, this is Jess from the Sequential Artist Workshop, and we're looking at making a watercolor experiment, a comic with watercolor. This week we wanted to try three colors out. I kind of started mixing it. These are three primary colors. We have a blue, believe it or not, that's red. It looks quite orange. And then a yellow. If you mix these three together in different variations, it said you can get any color you want. I did make a three color painting already using one red, one blue, and one yellow, but I used this warm yellow, this cool red, and this kind of reddish blue, this ultramarine blue, to get all these colors. So now what I wanted to do was try the other blue, the other red, and the other yellow. So here they are on the palette. This is like a cyan blue. This is like a warmer cadmium red, and then this is like a lemon yellow or something like that, or a cadmium yellow light. I don't have the original package for this watercolor, but I could look it up to get the actual colors. If you are interested, let me know. I have the same template. We've been making the same comic every week just to keep things simple. I have a tea kettle and then some, like a zoomed out shot, another zoomed out shot, and a close up shot, just to have a variety in the different lighting experiments. So the only thing you need for this project is something that's already inked and the ink is dry, and the ink you're using is water fast. And then if you did use pencil, try to erase it, and don't be too discouraged if you have some smudges or something like that. This got quite smudgy. I'm not sure why, but oh, there's a little bit of cat hair. And when you put watercolor on top of your drawing or ink drawing, whether it's pencil or ink, some of that the smudges kind of soften a little bit. And you can also get rid of it in Photoshop if you want, but I wouldn't worry about trying to erase it or cover it with white or anything. Just see if you can cover it with color if it's something that you don't particularly like. And then the idea is, where do I start? What do I start with? Try to see if you have an idea in mind. What's something that you wanted to accomplish last week that you haven't tried yet? I think for me, I'm still mixing some colors. Like I mixed a blue and a red to get a really beautiful purple and some other neutral tones, but sometimes I'm just laying down the color and not mixing as much as I really want to. So this week, I say this every week, it feels like, but I'm going to try to mix a little bit more, and I do think I can get more contrast. I might be brave enough to go a little darker. So that's what I'm going to try. But I think it's good to work light to dark and dark last with watercolor because it's the easiest way to do it. I seem to have a lot of yellow last time, and this week, because I have access to all three colors, I really want to try to make it as realistic as possible. I don't know how that's going to go. My tea kettle is this very, very, very light kind of aqua color, but I can't add white, which I'm used to doing with gouache. But I'm just gonna put this color here and see how it goes. I'm using the side of the brush, and I'm keeping the brush pretty loaded with like a watered down pigment, trying to drag it around to a point so that if I have a little bit of pigment, you can't really see it, right? That's not bad. The other thing, if you're like, whoa, this is too green, don't panic. It's got to dry. I think that's either cat hair or brush hair. And it's gonna look different depending on what other colors you lay down for the other moments too. So give yourself space to paint a little bit more. You can, I feel like you can adjust the color a little bit later. So try not to be too fussy too soon. It's okay to have standards. All right, so I'm putting a little more blue in here to mix with my orange. Now I want to add more orange, but I don't want to put blue. See, I'm calling it orange, but it's supposed to be a red. I don't want to put blue on that lighter half palette pigment, so I'm rinse my brush. Now I have this purpley color. I tend to get about here with color mixing. I'm like, that's fine, but I think it might be too orange. I want to tone that down a little bit. The opposite of orange is blue, so I'm going to take a little bit more blue. But this feels purple. The opposite of purple is yellow. So if I add yellow, that hopefully should tone it down. It feels like I've kind of arrived at the same brown. I'm trying to mix a hair color. My hair actually has a lot of silver in it, but we'll do brown. And this is more brown than the brown I had last week. I'm also getting a lot of those texture artifacts I don't really want, but it's hard to do all this at once. So just dragging the brush back and forth through that pigment again on the page so that if it gets a little stuck, it's happening at the edges of the drawing so it looks a little natural. Now if I want to paint that face and this is wet right here, it might start to bleed in, so do your best to come back to it later. It'll dry eventually. Usually doesn't take too long. This paper has quite a bit of cotton in it, so it absorbs water pretty fast. I'm left-handed, so it's hard for me to actually have my palette right where my hand wants to go, but I want you to see what colors I'm working with. Well, that's looking good. A little boring, but it's okay to start off boring. What about a flesh tone? How do we do that? So I'm not quite that brown skinned. I've got a lot of red, so we could start there. So the thing is like just mixing the color you need and then just making sure it's not too dark. But let's say, oh, I made it too dark. You always kind of have to start too dark. This looks like it's pretty watered down, but you could start with a spot on your painting where you think, well, that's got to be dark anyway, so that you don't have to worry about quote-unquote messing it up. So now we have a nice shadow, and that almost looks like rim lighting or something. Maybe we have room for another shadow here. The green is dried a little bit, but that green pigment's going to get picked up just a hair. That seems fine, right? nothing crazy. I do think this is starting to get peachy, but I do think we could even have a little bit more red. Again, I'm only using these 3 colors to get all the colors I need, which is hard to do. So that's more red. Also, it's hard to see because it's off camera, but you might want to change your water if it starts going to be a color. It's green here, so my water is going to fight against me a little bit. But since it's a demo, I'm going to see what I can get away with. Again, if you're concerned something might be too dark, for example, I want a light skin tone, but it might still be too dark, you can always start with where you think a shadow might be. Like the left side of the face and the left side of the neck. Sometimes, oh, see, and I overlapped it. I didn't mean to, and nothing crazy happened, so that's good. Sometimes it's, it's not quite the right color, but it'll dry and it calms down a little bit. So it's never over till it's over, and it's not over. I'm just doing a little bit just to see. Again, everything's kind of comparative too, right? So if I put a really dark color in the doorway, I don't want to do that because I don't want to miss the cat. That might make this pop forward a little bit too. All right, maybe we're going back to the blue. I have to remember which ones I'm using. And that's kind of green. So we can maybe put that in the doorway. Just lightening it up a little bit. I still think it's a little green, so I might add a little bit of red. Maybe I'll go over here. This is like a gray. Gray might be nice. Maybe I like that color better. It might be too close to the, hair color I have, but let's try it. No, that's pretty good. I think I'm being braver than I normally would because it's a demo video and I'm trying to go faster than I normally would. Just to show you, you'll probably do a better job, which is good. That's not bad. Maybe I could drag that over. I like that. Okay, that's actually nice. This is going much better than I thought it would. We could do a little texture here for the smoke. I think this could be darker. I don't love these colors I've got here, but I'm working with it. Can always make it a little bit darker. What else have we got? Trying to find something easy. I need another brown. I like the brown that's happening on my palette with the yellow, so maybe I can mix that a little bit more. I'm trying to find all the inanimate objects in this scene. I think that's a little too yellow. Get drag a little. Now that's way too orange. But I am kind of curious to use a saturated color. So what if I put this? This is supposed to be kind of a butcher block wood color. I bet it'll look fine. That's pretty good. And I don't want to have 100 colors because it's a comic. Like I need to. It already takes a long time to draw it and ink it. So if I can repeat a color, that's really good. Oh, I love that. I think it actually looks pretty good. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I should have painted the kettle over here too. But now I have to mix it again. I hope I have a tiny bit left on my palette. I'm gonna see if that's the right color and enough for, oops, the kettle over here. Let's see. It's not great, but it's not bad. Oops. Oh, now I'm really getting messy. That's fine. All right. What else can we paint? I'm still undecided about what to do with the background here, but I'm really satisfied with the hair, how that turned out. I wanted the shirt to be black and white, but I do think we need a little bit of color. Ooh, what did I do? I put my blue in the wrong spot. That's okay. Rinsing. I'm gonna get that. I'm just gonna grab all these colors and see what is this. I'm getting a lot of dark greens. If I mix the brown, I want to make a darker color. The opposite of green is red. So I'm going to grab red. And the opposite of, this is like a purple, is yellow. Make it a little bit of yellow. Sorry for the shaking camera. So I got this, it's basically another brown. But I do have a spot for it, thinking about dark values under this table. Really dark. And there might be a little bit up here, like where the ceiling is. That might be good. I'm trying to drag that. I could put some on the cat. Might be okay. And now that it's lightened up a little bit, I could probably add a little bit on the edge of the table. Where else can I put it? Underneath the windowsill. So I also tend to start with something that might be a shadow, because then I'm like, don't have to be too worried if it's a little darker than I thought. So there's a shadow, right? Oh, you can see that. It's hard to see. It's pretty subtle. It'd be nice to have a really bright color back here, but I also want this to feel like morning light. So I'm going to get that yellow all by itself. It's probably going to look really bright. Oh, look at that. That's okay. It's pretty saturated pigment. Sometimes that's how morning light feels. All right. What else can we do here? That's crazy, but I'm okay with it. Like, we could roll with it. I want to do more of like a purple. Here's a red. And I want a little more blue. Let me add that. Ooh, it's way too dark. What am I gonna do? See, I'm rushing. Try not to be in a hurry. The paint won't dry that fast. Okay, that's kind of the purple I was going for. Thinking about darker colors. This might be a little too dark, but I can always make it lighter. Sort of like, the shades aren't quite that dark, but I was looking for a dark color just to see. Because I want there to be some contrast still, because that's what makes comics really good, in my opinion, is if you can have some contrast. So that doesn't, it's very exaggerated, but I'm really not mad about it. Here's some darker shadow there, right? Ooh, I finally got a black all by accident. I didn't mean to do that at all. That's beautiful. I'm like, oh, where else could I get it? We could have a darker down here. So now if you have a couple of tones, it starts to look really multi-dimensional, which might be what you're going for. I'm not sure. And I mean, I could even make that shadow a little bit more prominent, right? It's a little dry on dry, so it's not, it's a little streaky, but I don't mind it. I can make this a little darker. Just trying to get some contrast again. And then I wonder if I can do, I'm trying to look for a brighter color background here. And I think that might be nice. Oops, there you go. I keep painting off screen. I'm sorry about that. So what I try to do, I don't know if it's the best policy, is just to try to cover everywhere I want a bit of color, just to start to figure out, like, now I have something to go off of. Like, oh, I want to make this slightly different. Now I know kind of what everything is. All right, so we have a little bit of everything. I think we could get more in the background of the second panel, and I'm just going to recycle that orange I made because I think it's neutral enough and I like the way it looks. So I wanted to mix colors. I wanted basically what feels like almost a full palette using 3 colors, but I didn't want to make 100 colors. I wanted it to be sustainable. And I'm personally not like too concerned if the left side's darker than the right. I think that's okay. You can always adjust these things and add things. Tinker, tinker. Here's more red. That's probably a little too dark. But it is beneath. It is a shadow kind of area, so might be okay. All right. Let me see if we can get a little more brownish. This might be like very dark. It's not that bad. I kind of wish I had put it elsewhere. It's a good color. All right, so I mean, this is still wet. I'm curious. I can tone that down a little bit. So you can work a little bit wet to wet. Maybe I could do a shadow here. It's not exactly the same as that, but that's okay. Oops. Come back. I do think that could be darker. So mixing kind of a brown, I guess. I just want it to recede a little bit. All right, and that can go there. So we're starting to make something look a little three-dimensional. You don't have to, like I said, but that's something I was curious about. So basically everything's covered. I mean, the face really doesn't have any pigment in it, which I think is okay, but it seems a little timid. So, I mean, I would go back and add a little bit more. Now, my water's pretty dirty, but you could do it. That was kind of, all right, so that looks a little bit better. Just making sure I didn't leave anything behind. You know what else I think would be nice is if we put that yellow down here, just to have it one more time. So this feels like a little less random. I do think that yellow is like very bright, but that moment is kind of dramatic. So maybe it's all right. And then I have the steam here. Ooh, look, it's too dark and it's wet. It's no good. It's okay. Look at that. Right in the final hour, I messed everything up. But you could see if you have a wet brush, you can kind of drag the pigment out, and then if you take the water out, it's kind of hard to do, but that's me cleaning up with just a brush. But if you have a paper towel, that'll probably work better. I'm making it worse. That's fine. If someone's reading a comic, they're reading it pretty fast, so they're not going to notice all the things we notice when we're putting the work down. I'll put a little bit of gray there. All right. I don't want to be too fussy, so maybe we'll call that done. So that starts to feel a little bit more like real life color, kind of. Here's the first experiment, which was a little crazier, a little very, very yellow, but I kind of loved it. And then this is like maybe the most realistic I've gotten so far with 3 colors. I like it. I think it came out pretty good. I think I'll let it dry, and if there's something I can do different here with the yellow, maybe make that slightly lighter. If you're ever like, ooh, that's a little too dark, you can always kind of re-wet something and pull it up. I really should use a paper towel, but I'm using my fingers because it's what I have. That might kind of mess with the ink a little bit, but hopefully you can see that's a little bit lighter. It's still going to have quite a saturated color to it, but there's also a lot of green in that water. This is like lazy man's watercolor, but I don't know. I think this came out really, really nice. It's just 3 colors, like I said. So I used that like kind of greenish blue, the orangey red, and then this like yellowy, the yellow that leans a little bit towards green. But I think we got a nice range here. So that's all for this week, and you can join me again when we use a full palette. I'd really love to do those 3 colors and then be able to add some of these neutrals, that really gorgeous purple. I'd love to try that. So stick around for the next episode, and I'll see you then.